Hello, everybody. Got it. Hello, are you Andy?
Yes, ma'am.
Hi, Andy. It's Pam. It's nice to meet you.
Hi, come on in.
Y'all, I usually will stand up, but you know what? This is kind of a workshop today instead of just a discussion, so to speak, a presentation. You've got something in front of you that we're really going to go through, and usually this process is, a day process. It can be a series process for those of you who remember that we went through a whole series of doing this. But we have an hour and a half today, so the thing that's important to me is that we get you through the process, that you understand what it is that you really want to be able to accomplish using this outline in order to set up your goals for 2024. And I'll give you a little bit of background of how it kind of came to this and how I started doing business planning this way, and I'll share a little personal story with you. We'll change the names to protect the innocent, so to speak. The person that I was dealing with at that time was one of my agents years ago. It was probably 15 years ago, maybe a little bit more than that. Good morning, Cynthia. Good morning. And he was a heck of a producer. And I used to always talk about the fact that in January, he'd always have a great year, and then in January he'd come in and I'd say he'd go deep. He'd walk around like this, in January. And didn't matter what we did. If he set the goals, we'd make the goals, and by January he's walking around like this. So the one year I called him in, and I'll just say his name was John. And I said, John, come see me. Let's just sit down and talk. And I said, every year we go through this. Every year I called it going deep. You go deep. You walk around, the brows go down, you look like you got the weight of the world on your shoulder. What is wrong? I need to understand what is wrong. You set your goals last year, you made more money than you've ever made. What is wrong? And he goes, that's exactly the problem. I made more money than I ever made, and I still don't know where it is. And he said, I still didn't. I had things that I promised my family, we still didn't do those. I've got some things that I should have taken care of. And I'm listening to this and I'm thinking, let me connect this dot. So the goal we had last year meant nothing, right? He gave me a number last year, and I'm thinking, that's your number. We wrote it all down. He made it. But what you're telling me is it was an erroneous number. That you didn't give me a number that legitimately was going to accomplish what you wanted to accomplish in 2024. It was just a number, and we accomplished the number. So I sat there for a second. I said, I tell you what, you're going to go home, and all those things that you just said that you didn't accomplish, you're going to go home and figure out what they are. And you're going to write them down, and you're going to put a number next to them. Because if there's something that we should have done that should have been in that number, when you come back, I want the number that's actually going to reflect the life you want to live in, and we'll just say 2020 or 2024 at this point. Don't you come back with an erroneous number. And his wife happened to be one of his direct assistants, and she was amazing. She was phenomenal. So the two of them spent like 2 or 3 days, they went through it. I'll never forget the morning I was sitting at my desk, and he showed up and he was standing in my door. And he said, he looks at me and he says, do you have any idea how much money I have to make? He did, I'll never forget it. And I started laughing, I said, no, but I think for the first time in your life, you do. I said, come in, sit down, and he says to me, I remember the number. Because again, keep this in mind, this was like 15, probably more than that, years ago. He said, I have to make $186,000 next year. And I said, okay, we now know the number. Our job now is to build a plan that will deliver that number. So, right? Am I right, Cynthia? Have you heard it? Cynthia and I have been together for a long time. That true business planning is when you define the life that you want to live, and then you fund it, right? When the way you dream and the way you work are one and the same. And so many people will go into a year with this idea that this is the year I'm going to do this is the year I'm taking this is the year I'm going to... And when the truth is, when you look at all of their numbers, if you calculate it out, they went into the year thinking that way, but they didn't plan that way. They get to the end of the year somehow disappointed, and the truth is all they got was what they planned for. So that's where this came from, and that's why we start with really one of the first things, which is 2 references that you're going to see in here. You have 5 areas of purpose. And those 5 areas of purpose, in fact, we might as well turn to them and just let you start seeing what we're talking about to start with. We'll get to the business cycle in 1 minute, but you've got business purpose, right? You've got the things that, and here's the rules for what goes on that sheet. If you put it on that sheet, what you're telling yourself is, I want to accomplish this by December 31st of 2024. If it goes on the sheet, you got a question, Missy?
I don't. I was just listening.
Oh,
I'm intently listening like I've never heard it.
you look very bright sitting there.
Well,
Just so you
it's
know.
the lighting.
Is that it?
It's
The sheet is beige.
the ambient glow.
That's it. Good morning, Phil. All right, so in looking at this, here's the other scenario. It has to be truly definable. We've all heard the idea that for goals to be effective, they have to be measurable, they have to be written. That's all true, and that's a great slide on the wall. The truth is now, how do you apply it? How are you going to legitimately take the time? And I have coaching clients that know that this is a retreat. This is a weekend. Go someplace, lock yourself away, sit down and make yourself really walk through this. Turn off the autopilot button, which is the other secret to legitimate business planning. It's the other secret, it's the main secret to accomplishing really anything when you want to take what's become status quo for you and take it to the next level. Because most people have what I call, the Groundhog Day experience in real estate. You know that movie? Mm-hmm. Where every day he wakes up and it's the same day? Mm-hmm. You have the same year over and over and over again. I look at people's history. If I take on a coaching client, for example, I'm going to say, I want to see 19, 20, 21, 22. Write me down your numbers. Tell me what you were. Because I'm looking to see, do they just keep repeating the same year over and over again? And how do you do that if you're in real estate and your job is to build your base, right? And if you talk to 10 more people this year, 15 more people this year, 20 more people this year, and they all know 100 to 200 people in their own sphere of influence, and you're teaching them to refer, how do you keep replicating the same year? How are you not growing? How are you not building a bigger base of business, right? So one of the things that we want to be able to do is you have to turn off autopilot and you've got to go into these sheets and you have to document legitimately, what do I want business to look like by the end of 2024 that is a measurable priority that I want to accomplish, okay? So let's just talk about that for a second. Let's have you throw something out as an example. And here's again these guidelines. If I'm going to do it, I want to be able to check it off this list by 2024. By the end of December 31st, 2024, I want it done. It cannot be too general. You can't say, I want to make $25,000 more. I want to make 25% more income. That is not measurable. The only way you're measuring that is when you get to the end of the year and decide whether the number matches. You've got to have something that you can track as you're going to say, I want this, now what do I have to do to get this? That's what's going on this sheet, okay? So somebody throw out something that maybe you've been doing this for a while, maybe you hoped you would have gotten there when it comes to business, and it still has not happened, but this is the year. What? Well, there's a good start. But I'll tell you what, it's really funny. I have to tell this to you. When I started teaching, they told me back then, I went through a group of people at CRS, and it was one of the hardest things I ever do. It was like going through the Harvard School of presentations. I mean, they were tough. And one of the things they said is, don't ever ask a question you don't know the answer to. Don't ever ask a question that you don't allow people to think first and then share. And I just did exactly that. You all are still just getting out of the car to get here. And I just said, tell me what you're thinking. All right, so you go ahead.
So I do a lot on social. I do a lot on YouTube, but I don't have any type of click here, to get this guy, or as a way to really take those subscribers. They're there, I'm getting them, but I don't know
Yes.
who they are. I have no connection to them. And so I've got to figure out the how-tos and what that even looks like.
Okay, so a call to action built into your video.
Yes.
Fair enough?
Yes, but I
Okay.
mean, that's the easy part, but I don't know the mechanics of how to make the Google Doc, to attach it here, to then, I mean, I've done it a little bit, but I really don't.
Okay.
I really don't understand how that works.
All right, here's what I can tell you. Putting down, if you said that you wanted to have a minimum of one call to action built into your videos on a monthly basis, a new one, or one a quarter, whatever it happens to be, what's measurable, and then of course what's gonna have to follow from this are the actions and strategies necessary to make this happen.
I learned how to do it.
So we're gonna get specific, but you don't have to get so specific unless you said to yourself, take a course on. If that were the case, hire somebody on Fiverr to, coach, Fiverr coach for call to actions video. That would be a legitimate priority, okay? So be thinking about what could I legitimately do to accomplish what I know will help me make business better than it's ever been. At the end of the day, if this list occurs, then you should be more successful in this area of your life than you've ever been. That's the goal. If I do this, what would I do on this sheet that if I did it would make my area of business in life more successful than it's ever been?
I think I need to do more client events and be consistent about it, and then the steps that's being taken to get there. So not just say, come to my client event, right? So plan the client event, reach out to the client events. How many touches am I doing between now and the client event to get to the client event? And I think I would see more success if I even did it.
Okay.
I talk about it, but I haven't did it.
All right, here's another, this is a great scenario because how many client events are you doing right now? Am I right?
Yes, sir. Yes,
Right
sir.
now, and that's okay.
Yeah, that's
I mean, legitimately, you've got 0 on the books.
right.
So is going from 0 to 3 reasonable, or is going to 0 to 1 reasonable, 0 to 2 reasonable? What's a legitimate, measurable scenario? Don't, go crazy.
Right.
How do I get from 0 to 1? Is one good enough? Is 1 every 6 months good enough?
Right.
Okay, if that's the case, then I would put down on here, 1 client event every 6 months. Okay, that's a measurable scenario. It's going to now require you to dig into the actions and strategies to get that done. But the goal is check that thing off that I did it. And there are steps in this that are layered, right? Because once I know what I want to accomplish from a business standpoint, then we have to start moving into the actions and strategies. Because if I'm looking at, I want to do client events, if I want 2 client events this year, there's a place when you're looking at where you're getting your business from that's going to ask you for source. And when you put that down, your sphere of influence is going to be one of your sources.
Right.
When you start going to what you're going to now do monthly, once you know your sources, you should be creating actions and strategies every month that will make sure that your source works as hard as it should be working.
Correct.
Right? So if I have 10 sources, then I'm creating an actions and strategies list going through my sources to say, this month I'm going to accomplish this. Now, when I start doing that, I'm probably coming back here and saying, so what do I need to do to make sure these happen, right? In that particular area. So there's a layering effect to how these go, but we're going to start with the infrastructure here. Okay, fair enough?
Fair enough.
All right, who's got something else? Anybody got something you'd share? Come on. Come on. Is
I'm
there,
sitting here listening to all this and I'm like, just am trying to get to Wednesday. Also, I'm wondering, like, I would like to find a niche that nobody else is in.
okay, there you go.
That's my thing, because I don't want to be on social media and I don't want to throw client event parties and I don't want to do pop pies. I just want to put deals together, which is possible because obviously that's what I'm doing
Right.
and I'm doing it well, but I need to, how am I doing this? And then I need to push that further. So that's what I'm trying to figure out.
All right, and for right now, again, we've talked about the fact that we surely aren't saving the world in an hour and a half, right? But if I can give you an infrastructure that you can start writing this down and then you get yourself a day retreat. Then you pack yourself away for a while and start brainstorming all of this, because if it were me, and I would put down here that I want to serve a niche market in 2024, and then I would have my day with myself to be able to say, who is that? Who's it going to be? How am I going to start targeting? What would be the definable niche that I would get excited about and start working? What are my strategies for working that?
And I think I have it, like I'm pretty close. I don't want to share it because I don't want to share it.
You want it to be your niche.
It's my name, but it's an area that is going to become incredibly flooded here soon, and I just need to figure out how to be the first boat at the harbor.
Okay. And keeping in mind that especially when it comes to serving some of the niche markets that are out there, search for the training that's in the national market that can help you start pulling in some of that. And that's the kind of thing, again, take a training class, do something that specifically tells you how to start building that base of knowledge. That's the kind of stuff that will go on here. Okay? All right, what else? Anybody else have something you throw out?
I think I have something.
Okay.
I've been operating in organized chaos for quite some time.
Uh-huh.
So this quarter, I definitely said getting organized and having some solid systems that I can rely on to carry me. I think there are other things that I do well, but it's more in the running phase, the walking phase with the planning. I start and then I get bored and I want to run. So then I'll go and then I'm like, we should have sat down and finished that. So that's I think that's one of mine for sure.
Okay.
You're not alone there.
Okay.
And now when you talk about systems, one of the things you have to look at from a system standpoint is that systems are going to do one of two things or both. They're going to make you more effective or they're going to make you more efficient, right? That's really legitimately what they're for. So if I say I want better systems, well, that's like, saying I want to make $1 million. Well,
Exactly.
right? So if I want better systems, then you have to look and say, what's the systematic approach to what I'm doing that tends to be holding me back the most at the moment? What is it? Is it a database that you're really legitimately working? Is it checklists for, every time you do a transaction, you don't have a checklist that you're moving through and you're constantly rebuilding something? Is it, I don't have a defined buyer presentation or a seller presentation, so if I get a phone call tomorrow, I have to run in the office and start from scratch and throw it all together? What is it that is causing you to be less efficient or less effective that you can define and say, this is what I want? Okay? You have to be very sensitive to not working below your pay grade.
Right.
There are certain things that no matter how much you want to do it and how much you'd like to put it in place, you will never do. Right? There are some people, it's like you're just saying, I'm not ever doing that. I'm not ever doing that. You have to be legitimate with yourself to say, I'm not ever doing that. But then the question is, if I'm not ever going to do it, can I get away with never doing it and still making what I want? I mean, there's a plan, there's a path to everything. Or do I need to do it, I'm just not ever going to do it, so I need to get somebody else to do it. And that's the kind of thing that, again, here says, I must hire a 20-hour-a-week administrative assistant. I must hire a 5-hour-a-week administrative assistant. And in looking at getting yourself to the point that you're not working below your pay grade, you have to also make sure that you're not overloading the system. So, you don't go hire somebody for 20 hours when you can't even come 5 hours because you're so confused, right? I mean, that's just the truth. There's a lot of us that can get up and get a lot done, but there's no way in heck I can slow down long enough to find 5 hours to give to you, let alone hire you for 20. And then you have people that go out there thinking, I've got to get help. They go hire somebody for 20 hours and the person's standing there looking at them like, what are you going to do with me today? I mean, give me something to do.
Yeah.
And the one thing I can tell you, again, might even be from a business standpoint, is to define a minimum of 5 hours of low-dollar productivity with someone else. That could be what you put on this list. And it can be something as simple as, this is one of the things that I usually will tell if I've got somebody in coaching is, within that time frame, if I can see that they're overloading the system that for the next 2 weeks, I don't care how you do it, I don't care if you take a piece of paper with you, I don't care if you're technology oriented, if you are great on your phone with notes, every time you have your hands on something that somebody else could do as well or better than you could do it at a lower pay grade, put it on the list.
Yeah.
Right? I'm not saying can you afford to pay somebody to do it yet. I'm just saying
Document.
I could get somebody to do what I'm doing right now at pay grade or below pay grade. Things like your communication. How many of y'all are stuck in emails for hours a day sometimes, right?
Yes.
Right? How many of you all would prospect, but you just can't get to it? Right? You've got things, every time you have a sale, a listing come in, or a sale come in, and it goes into that proverbial file folder, and you didn't prospect off of it, you just wasted a prospecting opportunity. There's no way, you can't go sell somebody a house or list a property that gets sold and file it away, have a raving fan as a buyer or a seller, and tell nobody about it, and not be losing business. So when you're thinking about prospecting, communication, transaction management, right? Oh my gosh, what is something I can't think of them right now. But we'll send you the category, because after you get that list, if you take 2 weeks and just every time you do it, write the list, then you take the category list and start defining it. Well, this would fall under communication. Well, this would fall under transaction management. Well, this would fall under, all of a sudden what you've created is a job description by category. And now when you sit down to find somebody, you can look at that and think and say, if I had somebody do this list for me, I'd probably need somebody 5 hours a week, right? You know, when we're talking about, what do we call it? Stuffing envelopes, you know, low dollar administration, that type of stuff. If I hired somebody, I'd probably need them for about 5 hours a week to get this list done. And oh, by the way, I have a job description ready. When I sit down, I'm going to say, these are the things I need you to get started with. And then if you've got that, now you just have to figure out exactly how you want it done. Show them once, let them go with it, let them make their mistakes, transition with you, and you're getting 5 hours of work off your back, okay? And that 5 hours is now going to let you buy your life back for 5 hours, or it's going to let you take your time to higher dollar productivity. Now you can go do some of the things that you need those 5 hours for, right? That are distracting you during the week, and somebody could have done it at $10, $15 an hour. Here's what I know. Most agents, when I run through their numbers, they're making a minimum of $40 an hour. They're making, you know, some of them are making $400 and $500 an hour. So when you have somebody that, you know, when you're sitting down doing your marketing, and that's one of the other ones, marketing. When you're sitting down doing your marketing, and you could have paid somebody $15 an hour to do it, and you're making $40 or $50 an hour, even then, you're working below your pay grade. Okay? So just be aware of that. These are great reasons for bringing this up now, because it'll help us dig more into what this business goal really is. Okay? Using your time wisely is extremely important. Okay? Who else has got something? Anybody else want to throw one out? You look like your mind is,
It's funny.
it's spinning.
I think I just want to be, which sounds so general, so I'm trying to make it more specific. But, like, I have lots of goals with video, but I don't always implement them. So, I don't know, to me, the content is where I get stuck on, because I'm like, where do I want to focus my content? Do I want it to be, like, things around Virginia Beach? Do I want it to be just real estate based? Do I want it to be like, so it just overwhelms me and then I just don't do it. So trying to figure out what video is going to be.
And in the video class, we started with the checklist that basically says,
yeah.
right? Fill this thing out and figure out who it is, because if there's anything you're going to hear from people from a video standpoint that are out there making money, is you can't be everything to everybody. The place you make money in video is when you drill into a message and a niche market that you are consistently working with to own at that point. They start looking for you, they relate to you, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about that a little more. All right, anybody else?
Just
For me, it's just really paying attention to your clients, to my clients. You know, we can get so busy and then we don't have a system or anything going on to just keep in touch with them, keeping them top of the mind. So that's what I have to work on.
Okay.
And you know, you constantly getting new business in, and then now, okay, you have to squeeze these people in, but then you forgot about the past ones.
Okay, here's one thing I do want to throw out, maybe I can get a little test case here. Again, forgive me if you're not with the company right now, but I'm going to throw it out. One of the things that we've talked about is trying to get back to having client events within the company, because we did some major client events, right? And if I did that, if I got with the powers that be and we were able to do that, is there anybody in this room that would get on that committee with me, that we would be able to start pulling them together? There is a layering effect with your clients. And if there's anything that, you know, the saying is out there that the money's not in the list, the money's in the follow-up, right? You can have a list of 400 people, it doesn't matter. If you're not following up, it doesn't make any difference. And if I dig for people's numbers, and here's the other thing I do want you to do, go to, you might as well fill this in real quick. Go to, that one sheet. Here's the one-page sheet.
Oh, I think it's like 12 or something like that.
12 or 13.
It's called Mastering Your Business
This is
Plan.
terrible, I can't.
Oh, 11.
Oh, there it is. Oh God, it came out on 2 pages. That's why I was looking for the one.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay, don't worry about it. On here where it says source of sales,
What page?
this is gonna be on 11. Right, and what I really like, I'll tell you what I'm gonna ask you to do. I probably reformat this last thing, just see this little blank space that you've got over here on this side? I want you to write down like numbers 1 through 10, okay? And this is going to be that list that would fall under this category here. What are your sources of business? And see, again, one of the reasons I'm looking for people's past history, well, I want to see where did your business come from in 18, 19, 20, 20. I'm looking for patterns of where the business comes from. I'm looking for patterns where maybe something worked and they just stopped doing it. And when I ask them, why'd you stop doing it? Half the time they don't know. I don't know, I just didn't do it anymore. I just didn't. So what I'm looking for here, the first 3 things I want you to put on there is to break down your sphere. It should be SOI, which is going to be when your sphere of influence buys or sells from you, that's 1. SOI referrals is 2. It's a totally separate category. And SOI past clients is 3. You want to track them separately. And the reason for tracking them separately is I can take somebody that's been in the business for 15 years, get them to break their numbers down, and I'll say, you know, give me your numbers, and I get 1 lump sum for their sphere. And when I break it down, let's just say they've got 25 sales, they might have 20 in past clients, and, or let's just say 18 in past clients, 3 in SOI, and they've got, what does that leave, 18, 19, 20, they've got 4 in SOI referral. Now,
Can you
how
say those 3 again?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so let's just say, let me make it easier. We'll say there were 30 sales, right? They have 20 in past clients. They have 5 in SOI, which means there's 5 people in that base that came and worked with them for the first time in this past year. Their base brought in 5 sales that were sphere of influence, buy or sell, first time. They have 20 that came back a second time or more, right, as SOI past clients.
Right.
And they had 5 that were SOI referral. I know immediately they don't teach their people to refer. You can't. You cannot get a database of 200 people and have 200 people where not everybody in that group can buy or sell and get 20. But everybody in that group can refer and only get 5. You can't. You can't have that many people that love you enough to call you 20 times, but have 200 people that will only call you 5 times to tell you about somebody who wants to buy or sell. You're not delivering the message to them. You're getting raving fans that love you, and if they pop up tomorrow and go, I think I want to sell the house, I think we're going to buy something, they're going to call you, but they're not telling anybody about you. And so that gets built into the strategy that Cynthia was just talking about. when you're interacting with them, you've got to be able to teach the entire group to refer, not just call you. And if I've got someone that's been in for 20 years and I've got, you know, a shortage of past clients, then I start to dig into what happens when people work with you and they don't come back. You know, that person, how often are they bringing new business in the door? How often are they out there doing the things to bring new blood in? They're constantly starting over, right? So maybe I've got somebody with 20 sales, they've been in for 10 years, and out of those 20 sales, 15 of them are SOI, which means 15 people bought and sold for the first time. They're out there, I guarantee if I dig in, they're working their fanny off, constantly finding new contacts. And after they get them, they're not keeping in touch and nobody calls them back. All of those patterns can be found in breaking this down into 3 stages. So your first 3 under sources has got to be SOI, SOI referral, and SOI past clients. Okay? And then anything that follows behind that, Jennifer, you're obviously going to have video, right? You're going to have video. That's one of the things you want to do, is going to be one of your things. Whatever you're going to do, you want to niche market, it should be on your list. You've got to be able to define anything that you're putting your time into should be on this list. This is not like flavor of the month. And that's what happens to so many people in real estate. They don't work from a plan. They don't have a center core. They don't have, this roadmap. And so they wake up every day focused on my shortage and how am I going to fix the shortage, instead of what did I define as my plan, what do I need to do with that plan today to make this plan work. They just wake up and go, I need a listing, what can I go do today? Flavor of the month, okay? If you've defined it and you do it, then you're going to bring to the table what you need based on what you said. If I look back, here's the other thing I'm going to be looking for. If somebody says to me on source of sales, I have 10 for, SOI, I'm going to do 12 from SOI referrals, and I've got 5 from, because maybe I haven't been in that long, from SOI past clients. If they've got 10 SOI, 12 SOI referral, and I go back and look in their history, and on their SOI they did 3 last year, how are you going from 3 sales from your sphere to 10 this year? The next thing I'm looking for is, okay, if that's the case, Alicia, you had 3 last year, you want 10 this year, how are you basically going up by 300% in productivity in your SOI? What kind of actions or strategies are you putting on the table this year that's different from last year? What do you plan? Because if you can tell me that number, you've obviously been thinking about it, or that number was arbitrary. If you say I want 10, and I say, really, how are you closing the gap with 7 more than you got last year? How are you tripling what you did last year? You should be able to say, well, I know, and I get that, but I'm planning on doing client events, and I've already talked to people, and I've got some sponsors that I'm working with. If you start throwing out strategies, then I know that number might be real. If you've got nothing, that's just a number, right? Mm-hmm. Numbers don't lie. And these are a pain in the fanny to do, but if you will do a legitimate business plan, you will stop yourself from wasting so much time for the next 12 months, it's ridiculous. You'll keep going back to what is working, what's not working, and why. You'll be massaging this all the time, okay? All right, anybody have a last one? No. I see somebody. All right, y'all, let me just finish up then with these areas of purpose. We use business as our example, but you owe it to yourself, which is where the balance in life is going to come from. I have sat in front of people making a lot of money from a coaching standpoint that have said to me, if I don't get some balance in my life, I'm quitting. I'll go work at Walmart. I mean, they have. Am I right?
That was me.
That was
this past year.
And they were serious.
I was serious.
I'll give it all up. This is not fun.
Yeah.
I don't care how much money I'm making. It is. I don't want to do this. That's why these become important, because this is where you define balance. This is where you say, I want to do this, but when I do it, I want it to do this for me financially. This is what I want personally, right? This is what I want from, well, and actually when we have financial, personal, family, and when you're looking at this and answering these questions, the question is, what would have to happen in 2024 in my family that if it did, our family life would be more successful this year than it's ever been? What would I have to do? Then the same thing. What would happen in my personal life that if I accomplished it in 2024 would make my personal life more successful than it's ever been, or at least more successful than it was last year, right? How am I moving the dial forward? And again, that's why you need hours by yourself for a little bit. If you don't, somebody's going to come up and this is going to become meaningless. It's going to be, oh, I got something else to take care of. This is only important when you make it important. Big rocks, you know that story about big rocks? Everybody heard the big rock story, right? I know you've heard it like 18 times. You've heard it, Alicia. Where the professor is in front of the university class and he's got that big huge urn in the front and it's got rocks sitting there and the rocks are sitting, you know, to the point that they're outsides up above the top of the urn. And he says to the group, he said, is it full? Is the urn full? And the students say, yeah, I mean, it's packed to the point that you couldn't get another rock in there. And so he goes out the door and he gets a big bucket filled with gravel and brings it in and pours it in. And the gravel moves all through it and drops in between the crevices of these big rocks. And you can see it coming to the top. And he looks at them and he says, now is it full? And they say, oh, yeah, okay, we get it, yeah. He goes out, comes back in with his bucket, pours sand in, and the sand moves in between everything and fills in the blanks. And he says, is it full? And they got to the point now they no longer trust the question. They're just kind of looking, and of course he goes out one more time and he comes back with a bucket of water. And he pours out water and the water fills in until the top. He gets to the top and he said, now it's full. But the purpose of it was to say, if we had started in the opposite direction, would we have ever gotten the big rocks in? And the understanding was this: the gravel, the sand, all of that stuff, they're all the irritations, they're all the responsibilities, they're the work, they're the business that we've got to get up and do every day. It will fill your life up to the top with nothing left. If you don't put the big rocks in first, you will never get them in. You'll never get them in the schedule. And these pages, business is not really big rocks. Business is the vehicle. Business, if your big rock in life is business, you're probably lonely, right? If your life is fulfilled by working all day, every day, you're probably filling life at that point. It doesn't mean you can't be rewarded and love your job, but at the end of the day, when you make that money, it's supposed to fund what you want to accomplish financially. It's supposed to accomplish what you want to accomplish personally. And for, I probably shouldn't say this, but it's usually what I find. Men aren't as bad at this as women are. Women tend to blend personal and family into the same thing. That's not what we're talking about. Personal is personal. Personal is what am I going to do for myself this year that will make me feel like I am a more successful human being. Right? It could be finally making a darn doctor's appointment that you've been trying to make for 6 months, but you made everybody else's in the family's appointment, it's just not yours, right? What is it that you need to do for yourself personally? I mean, I remember this one story, and it's kind of a blending between the two of these, between business and personal. There was this team that was out of Canada, and they did a huge amount of business doing video and blogging. They were the hyper-local specialist in their marketplace, and that's the two things that they did. They wrote amazing blogs, they tied them into video, they did all this kind of stuff. And it was a husband and wife, and the wife was the one that did all the writing. That was a lot of work. to sit down and know that every week she was having to write this stuff. And the drain on her, the mental drain, because that's really pulling from, you can't just go, if I'm gonna keep writing stuff that's content rich and people are gonna pay attention instead of filling pages, I gotta pay attention to this. And she decided that the business content was important, but so was her well-being, her personal well-being. So they agreed that she flew to Cabo once a month and stayed from Thursday through Sunday, flew home on Monday, and wrote all the content once a month in Cabo.
That's awesome. The way it is.
I think it was worth the investment.
like that.
I mean, wasn't it?
was rich.
She knew she better come up with some content, right? I mean, somebody's gonna stop those trips real quick if you don't get your content. But is that what we're talking about? You know what, I'm willing to work my fanny off, I'm willing to do this, but I'm gonna find a way that the rest of these things don't suffer in order to make that happen. How am I gonna plug in to these things and get the win-win, the best of both worlds? Okay? So the same thing again, the family standpoint, the spiritual standpoint. If there's anything that I know, and again, forgive me for you all in the room, there's only a few of our guys right now, but I can tell you that when I've done business planning and I've had rooms full, and I talk about the imbalance in somebody's life, you know, the idea that you're successful, that you're doing phenomenally well, but the wash is piled up higher than the washing machine, that you wanted to make dinner for 3 days and the hamburger finally spoiled in the refrigerator because you never got to it. That when I talked about those kind of things, there would be somebody in the room looking at me that was a woman with tears running down her face. That for most women, you can be successful in real estate and feel like you're a failure in life. You can feel like somebody out there is suffering. Your family, your children, your marriage, there's something about it that when we pour in makes us feel like we failed someplace else. That's why these things become so important. You've got to figure out how to get the balance of all of it at the same time, okay? So that's one of the things from today. You're surely not going to do it in the class today. But in that retreat, your job is to go in and say, okay, what's my business purpose? What's my financial purpose for this year? If I put it here, I want to accomplish it by December 31st of 2024. What's my personal purpose, my family, and my spiritual? Now, when you look at these sheets, you see 3 columns, right? When you put it on there, if, for example, it said on my personal monthly trip Cabo San Lucas, right? Look at the first line. Is there $1 there? You're not getting on that plane for free. So if I'm going to do this, what's it going to cost me? The first thing is, I want to do this, what's the cost? That's number 1. Number 2 is going to be, would somebody read that one for me? Calendar. The first one is the cost, the calendar, right? In other words, what's the time required?
Right.
Now, one of the other things that I'd love to see us do, which I usually have in one of these meetings, but we didn't do, remember we were talking about that 11 by 17 calendar?
Oh.
Remember? Did I say something? Maybe it was talking to Melanie. You don't forget everything, so I'm sorry. But these sheets, this is like 8.5 by 11, but there's an 11 by 17 that looks like this,
Well, that's
right?
11 by 17.
Right, well that's what, wait a minute, that's what this is.
Yeah.
That's an 11 by 17. And what we did with it is we made a calendar that had January through December here,
Oh, yeah.
and we had 1 through 31 across here, and it made squares.
That's cool. I can
Right?
make it and send it out.
Can we do
Yeah,
that?
that'd be cool.
All right. Isn't that cool? So the neat thing about that though is when you're doing these things, now all of a sudden I go, Cabo, okay, let me check and see what that trip is going to cost us on a monthly basis. I get a number, and where does that go? It does go on the $sign, but then it gets put on the budget worksheet, right? Under the cost of, in this case, we've got 5 as business expenses and 6 as personal marketing. Okay, I usually break those down to be 5 is the cost of doing business, 6 is the cost of creating business. The ones that fall on 6 should be, if I'm spending it, I should get a return on what I'm spending. On the ones that are your expenses for business, if I'm spending it there, I may not get a return, it's just necessary. I have to do it, I have to pay my dues, right? I can pay dues and never make a cent in the real estate business. So I have cost of doing business, cost of creating business. So if I'm gonna fund Cabo, which one should that qualify for?
Creating.
I better be creating some business off of that. There better be a return on my investment.
Or I'm not
So,
going back, and I won't go back.
So, right. And you know what? I have a real motive for writing.
Right.
This better be good, because I'm coming back next month.
It's gonna be rich.
And so once you fill out these sheets, which are why they have to happen first, is if they're in the first column, the dollar should show up somewhere on this budget.
Right.
If there's a calendar issue that we say, yes, if I'm gonna do this, I have to go once a month, then you should be pulling the calendar, and you should be going in and marking off on the calendar every month, whatever 4 days, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday, off the books, because I'm in Cabo during that time. And now you start to see when you're overloading a budget and when you're overloading a calendar. Because if you do that for all of these pages, if I say I'm going to Cabo every month, and then I go, oh yeah, that's right, and on my spiritual thing, I want to be involved in a mission trip once a quarter, and that's going to take 2 weeks. If I start crossing everything off, I'm going to look and go, okay, now that I've gotten done with all this, when am I working? You have to balance. You've got to know when you're overloading something. So the calendar will tell you when you overload your time. The budget will tell you when you've overloaded the money. Because whatever you add up on here, you've got to be able to build a plan financially to get to that number. Fair enough? Okay. So the priorities, these purpose schedules or sheets are all in here. And when you take these out, I'm trying to think of where, step 5 on the marketing budget. Something about that. Make sure that we've looked at. Oh, that's fine, because I pulled the dang things out. That helps to put them in order, doesn't it? 3. 2. My gosh, hang on.
Oh, I can help.
5. Let me put it back in.
Or just start from the next day. That's fine. Just start over.
I think we're good. Here we go. Oh, you got enough.
Yeah, just start fresh, start fresh.
That was below my pay grade.
That's okay, that's what I'm here for.
All right, y'all. So if you've done, it's impossible. I think the message that I want you to have is the reason why the agent that I told you about was giving me erroneous numbers is because he was just filling out what he thought he needed, not defining the life he wanted to live in order to fund it. Because here's the end of that story. When he came back in, it's funny that I remember, and I think I remember it because it was a paradigm shift for me. I went from doing it one way to doing it another. I would never go back again and ever have the, what do you want to make this year? Conversation with an agent, ever. And because he was the catalyst for it, I think it locked it in my head. Because I can remember the things he came in that he wanted to do. He had about a $20,000 IRS lien he was paying off. And it kept sitting on him. And you know how it is if you've ever been behind with IRS, which I did at 18 years old. By the time I was 20, I was making some really good money and I didn't do anything. I thought, this is great, these checks keep rolling in. I didn't know, I'd never worked for anything. I never paid taxes, and all of a sudden I had a lot of money and IRS got none of it. They caught up. But if you've ever been there and you get behind on IRS and the taxes and the interest and the penalties keep ticking away, you're constantly robbing Peter to pay Paul, because the more money you make, the more taxes you owe, and there's not much left to go back and pay the old bill. So you just keep making money, and the more you make, the more you owe, and then you go back and try and pay some more. It's like once you finally catch up, you don't ever go back there. So in his mind, he thought, here I made all of this money, but see, here I am, a manager, trying to motivate this person and connect with what he's trying to accomplish, and thinking, wow, we should be excited, he's made more money than ever, and he's carrying around a $20,000 debt to the IRS on his back. I didn't know that. So he wanted that paid. He was a hunter, and he wanted a certain gun that he wanted to buy, and he had not bought it, it wasn't cheap, he had it on the list, he wanted the gun. His father lived in Wilmington, North Carolina, my assistant, and she left the business, left my seat to go work with him as his buyer's agent. And his mother was his responsibility. He was a very responsible human being, and he wanted to take the family to Disney World, and been promising for 3 years to do it, he never did. So he felt like I was just talking about, he felt like the failure. I did all this money, got all this money, and I'm still, look at what I've got. So all of that was built in. And at the end of the year, he bought the gun, he paid off the taxes, he owned a boat with his father, and in the second week of December, they were all sitting in Disney World together. That's the success of getting legitimate about defining what you want to do, knowing where the money is going, and because he planned for it, when he made money, he had already associated money with what needed to go to where, so he didn't have to keep taking the money that should have gone to Disney World and take it over here because he never planned for it. It was all in there, okay? So once we've done that, you should have, number one, what it's going to cost you to accomplish what's ever on these sheets. Number two, what time it's going to take you to accomplish it. It may be that you say, I'm going to take a CRS class on whatever it is. Well, then you better go research the CRS classes, see when they're going to be, and plug them in. That means I'm going to be here. Oh gosh, I've got two choices. One's going to be in this month and one's going to be in that month. Based on what I've got so far in this month, I better not do it that month. That overloads the system. I'll put it in this month. Everything gets planned, okay? And then once you get through all of those, then everything should move to your budget worksheet. Fair enough? I've done my sheets, now I'm going to look at my budget worksheet. Your big rocks, you may have to have a separate sheet and just put a number. Because your big rocks are going to be on your areas of purpose. I want a trip, right? I want a trip to Disney World. How much is that going to cost us? I want to buy a boat with my dad. How much is that going to cost? Those are the rocks that need to get in the earth first, or they're never getting in, right? What are they? And I'm going to be legitimate. I want this number on here. Then number two is going to be personal expenses. And the personal expenses are really the things that are kind of fixed expenses in your life. I know what my rent or my mortgage is going to be. I know how much I'm spending monthly on utilities. You're going to put in the things that are kind of those fixed things that you can guarantee you're going to pay monthly. Okay? Charitable contributions. If you give a certain amount of money, you want to plug it in, that's one thing. If you know that you're going to give 10% of whatever you make, if that's what your goal is, then you may want to wait for that number at the end and gross up. Okay? Versus just plugging a number. And then on savings and investments. One of the things that, again, when you're talking about your financial goals, some people have no reserve. Before you worry about savings and investments, you better get a reserve. You better have an account that has enough money in it that when you hit the wall, you don't go into a hole and then all of a sudden this stuff freezes because now you're borrowing money from one thing to take care of something else. I was talking to another coaching client yesterday, and it's amazing to me how people tell on themselves, right? Because we were talking about, before the appointment, he said, I'm really feeling, and I never get this way, but I'm feeling at risk. I'm feeling like, I'm kind of got the weight on my back right now, and I don't know why I feel this way, because we actually have $3 million clients, and this person's in Nashville, they do well. We've got $3 million there, but with all the, and so, I said, well, let's take, because we were going to talk later that afternoon, let's take the first 15 minutes, we're going to talk mindset. We're going to get into this. So, but what he told me is, and there's a principle that I've got when we're talking about coaching, is that if you're going to consistently move forward in your business, you have to physically be in this quarter and mentally be in the next, right? When you're physically in this quarter and mentally in this quarter, you're stuck. Whatever problem you're dealing with, your solution is staring you in the face and you have no time to fix it. Make sense? And so when he said that to me, I thought, he is physically in this quarter and he's mentally in this quarter.
Sorry, could you say the thing that lets you know that again, so I can make sure
Yes, in terms of, if in order for you to move forward, you've got to physically be in this quarter and mentally be in next quarter. When he told me where he was, he said, I'm just feeling like the weight is on me, and we've got, got business, whatever it happens to be, but man, I've got some psyche issues right now. My head's messing with me, so to speak. And here's what I know. And this is what I told him to start with. Are we living in a world right now where the world has got us kind of going, man, this is kind of a strange little place, right? Does it make you feel like you're at risk? It does. It's like, gosh, all the things that we know to be normal are starting to shift. They're not as predictable as they were. We don't know what's going on. There's things that tend to feel like they're out of our control. And that, we can work as hard as we want to, but they're out of our control. And that was one of the things I said to him. I said, I want you to understand that from my standpoint, I'm where you are. I wake up every day and we've got to deal with that first. So things we don't control and, kind of get that psyche in the right place to deal with things we do control. And I said to him, and I'll call him John too. I said, John, tell me what you got for 30, 60, 90. And he goes, well, I think we've got a good amount coming up. And I said, well, from what you've told me so far, you're not doing a really good job of defining what your next quarter looks like, which probably tells me one of the reasons you're having the challenge is right now you are physically in this quarter looking at all the risk that's piling up. And you're not mentally in next quarter that's telling you it doesn't matter because you've got a healthy quarter coming at you, so what difference does it make? You are physically and mentally in the same place and you have no solutions because it's staring you in the face.
I feel like COVID got us there, and I can blame COVID for everything, but I felt like we were moving at such a fast pace with COVID that we forgot that we should have been forward planning and feeding the funnel, right? So it kind of got us to a point where we were racing, trying to keep up with the demand of the buyers who were coming out of the woodworks, the sellers who was making so much money, and now we're back to, I gotta plan this business again.
Right.
Yes. But let me tell you what happened in the middle of COVID with the people that were doing the business, is if they stayed in that place where they were physically in this quarter and mentally in this quarter, what happened was they didn't plan for growth.
Well, yeah.
They got stuck.
Right.
They could only do what they could do in front of them. If I had a coaching client that was projecting forward and they knew what was coming in 30 and 60 and 90, if they saw all the potential of what was happening, then we were making decisions now to get them support. We were hiring another buyer's agent.
Right.
We were getting an administrative person in. We were doing whatever was necessary to make sure that they didn't get slammed because they didn't scale. Fair enough?
Right.
Because there was a lot of business going on out there. And if you scaled correctly, then you had the infrastructure waiting for you, and you weren't afraid to hire it because the money told you it was coming.
Or on the converse side, you plan to keep prospecting and not expecting the business just come fall because the money bags are out there for a long time, and we were just going out there and picking them up as opposed to saying, well, let me map my route to get to it. You know what I mean?
Yes, but in some cases, there were people that were picking up those money bags that should have been picking up 3 times the money bags, but they didn't have the infrastructure to grow because they were too busy managing what they had.
We were just messed up, weren't we? Here.
Right? But that's what, so what I want you to really be able to look at from the standpoint of where we are in terms of going back to this, from the standpoint of savings and investment and being able to think, what is it that I need right now? I need to have some type of a of a reserve account. Because the thing that he said to me was, well, you're right, Pam. I mean, I probably don't have the clarity. I said, John, there's no denying you don't have clarity. You should right now be telling me, well, you know what, right now, the last thing I looked at, we've got like 10 transactions that are possible in the next 30 days, probably 15 by the end of 60, another 10 by, you should have told me that, and if you knew that, you wouldn't be saying to me, you know what, I don't know why I'm worried, because I can pull from reserves if I need to, but I don't want to have to. And I said, part of the weight you're feeling right now is your mindset is saying my solution might be reserves, not my next quarter. And you don't know how often you're going to have to go back to that well. Well, gosh, if I pull the reserves once and then I have to go back again, and so that weight is starting to eat at you, and you are living not only in the present, you're living in the past, and you cannot push forward. And I said, the next call, you better have a 30, 60, 90-day assessment of where you are, and you need to tell me whether we're healthy or we're not healthy, because here's the great part about that. If we're not healthy, we have time to fix it. I don't want to hear about reserves. I want to hear what your plan is to fix the next 30, 60, 90 days. Right? Savings and investments there, because there might be a 30, 60, 90 day, that no matter what we're doing, the resources are coming at us in a way that they're not fixing themselves. There may be oh my gosh, there's a pandemic and everybody closed down for 30 days. I mean, that, and when I say 30, I know it was 2 years, but you know, for where nobody can do anything, right? And I might have to go to reserve. But at least at that point, and this is what I said to him, I said, if you thought you were going to reserve and using it for what it's there for, I can fix it. I'll have to drain something for right now, but it's okay, I'll put it back in. All I have to do. The whole point of reserve is to take the pressure off to fix it until you can get it back. So you all need to make sure that you're setting aside something that says, I just need to know I can go to bed at night and know that if something happened and I get slammed, I can take care of business or bills for the next 30, 60, 90 days. What's that first number and how much of that can I fund? Okay? And then we're going to look at business expenses, and again, we're talking fixed business expenses. What are those things that you've got to pay your MLS dues, you've got to pay your, a lot of times people will put in there things like, again, the car and things along that line, your phone that you're using. We all know darn well we're not using the phone only for real estate. But if you can take it and write it off as a, you know, an expense, then put it under your business expenses. And then the marketing expenses, to plug those in. The thing I'm looking for when I check this is I'll say to people, tell me what you're spending in, you know, to grow your business. And they go lumped together, these two. They take their fixed business expenses and they take their marketing expenses and they give me a number. Well, gosh, Pam, I probably spend $40,000 a year. And what they're thinking about is when I do my taxes, I take about $40,000 in deductions, right? They take the cost of their phone bill, they take the cost of, you know, whatever it happens to be for mileage, whatever. And the truth is that's not all business expenses, they're just not. When I ask them what they're spending in their real estate business, I'm looking for the money necessary to create more business. Don't tell me $40,000, when we look at the money you're actually spending to create more business, it's $5,000. You know, you're spending $30,000 between dues and phone and, you know, MLS and all the other stuff, but when it comes down to what you're really putting into creating business, you know, you've got $5,000, you've got $500 a month going out, $6,000 a year. Well, what you need to know is that normally, there's two, you know, ways to think through it that are kind of general in nature. Usually, if you define the money you want to make, it takes 10% of the money you should be spending 10% of the money you want to make it. If I want to make $100,000, I should be spending about $10,000. If I want to make $500,000, I should be spending about $50,000. Or, for every dollar you spend, NAR has found that on the average there's usually a $6 to $8 return. So I spend $1, I get $6 to $8 back. So somewhere in between those two, you'll find a low and a high of what you should be spending if you really want to get to the income that you want to get to. Okay? So if I'm going to spend $10,000 and I'm going to get $6 to $8 back, then I should be making a minimum of how much? If I spend 10 and I'm supposed to get $6 to $8 for every dollar I spend, well, 6 times 10 is 60 to 80,000, right? I spend
Oh, okay.
10,
Okay.
so I spend 10,000, $1, I get $6 for every dollar I spend, so I should be getting a minimum of $60,000, $80,000 off that money, a minimum. If I'm gonna spend 10,000 in the formula I gave you, then if I'm gonna spend at least 10% of the money I wanna make, then I should be making somewhere around 100. So you've gotta figure, you're probably talking $75,000 to $100,000 is what you should be spending or making if you spend about $10,000. That's about $1,000 a month, $800 a month, right? How many people are really spending $800 a month to create business? Now, the longer you're in, the less you can spend. And the flip side of that is that people, if I'm drilling in and they say I don't have it, Pam, you know, I plugged in and I don't have that kind of money, then the next thing I'm doing is going back and looking at your sources. And if the sources you say you're gonna work in order to make the money is going to require you to spend money to make money, you've got the wrong sources. See, somebody can tell me, I hate open houses. Well, if you have no money to spend, you better have your fanny in an open house every weekend until you find people in an open house, because you don't have to spend a lot of money to hold an open house. The two have to match. There's a balance in this, right? So once you go through that, then we get to estimated taxes. And I'm just going to suggest that instead of drilling in and saying, oh, I'm in a 30 to 40% tax bracket or whatever it is, you're probably safe to take the numbers, because it tells you on here to take what? Items 1 through 6, doesn't it? Total 1 through 6, and then gross it up. And I would say that if you gross it up by 20%, it's probably enough. Because that's what's going to add the taxes into what you need to make. Fair enough? So if I take my calculator, somebody grab your calculator. And let's say you add up items 1 through 6 and they come to $100,000. And I've got to gross it up by 20%. Take $100,000 and divide it by 80%. Do it again and do 100,000 divided by 80 and then hit the percent key.
0.8%. 125.
Equals 125? Okay, so if I'm grossing up by 20, I have to subtract that from 100%, that gives me 80. If I'm grossing up by 25%, I subtract from 100, that gives me 75. That formula is sitting on here.
Right.
Okay, so if I take 100 and I'm gonna gross up by 20, it's told me I need to bring 125 in the door
In order to pay.
in order to get all of this stuff done that I added up and still have money to pay my taxes. Okay? Which then means if I grossed up by 25,000, I should be putting on a monthly basis about $2,000 a month into a tax account to pay my quarterly taxes. Fair enough? $25,000 a year is what it grossed me up. So once you've done that, y'all, now you've got your budget. You've got your purpose sheets that should define what it is that you want to do and how you want life to, to look like and what you want life to look like when you're living. And then you have the ability to come in like on the source of sales sheet. And if you just break down, like let's just say you take sphere of influence and you said you want 10 from your SOI. Then you're going to look and say, based on my previous patterns, what do I usually do in the first quarter versus the second quarter versus the third versus the fourth, right? I think I'll put, instead of 25, 25, 25, and 25, I do less in my first quarter, I do a lot more in my second, my third, so I think I'll put 20% in the first, right? 30% in the second, 30% in the third, and 20% in the fourth. So you're gonna put the number in. That means my goal of 10 will be this many in my first quarter, this many in my second. All you're doing now is kind of estimating what should my quarter look like coming at me. Based on what I said and what I need, I should be able to plan for at least making this many sales in my first quarter. right? Then you start to get at least some kind of litmus test for whether it's working or it's not working, okay? And then last just allows you to kind of take this and kind of run it through and say, okay, when I totaled everything up on my life budget, here's my number. So I added up my budget, it came to 125,000, I'm gonna plug that in for 125. The question then is gross commissioned income. If what you just said, because people will ask me, well, Pam, you know, like I have a spouse, I have a significant other, we share the expenses, whatever, and this is taken or this isn't taken out. If you start with the gross, and on your budget, you're putting in all the bills regardless of who pays them, then on the gross commission income, this is where you're gonna write in the number less whatever else is coming into the household, right? So if I know it's gonna take me 125, but I have retirement of $25,000 a year, then the gross commission income is gonna have to be 100,000 because I've already got 25 coming from a different source. If I have to make $200,000 based on this budget, and my spouse makes 50,000, then 150 has to come from me in commissions. Fair enough? So whatever else comes to the table, you're gonna deduct and put the net number that has to come from real estate in that number. And we'll talk about one of these last principles when we're done. Then on the required unit sales, in order to figure out how many sales that's going to be, you've got to have an understanding of what your stats are. What's your average sales price? What's your average commission rate, right? What's your average paycheck per transaction? So if you are, let's just say you are, and we have to look at two things. In fact, I probably need to throw this out because people in the room could be on a CAP program and you can be on a split program, right? If you're on a CAP program, then most likely under your business expenses, you're gonna plug in the CAP. Does that make sense? You're going to say, I need to put my cap of this, I need to put my transaction fees of this. You're gonna plug in on those lines the things that have to be paid out of the gross income that comes in. When you get to this number, and you're figuring my average sales price is 300,000, and I am really good about always bringing 3% in, I never negotiate. So my average paycheck then is 9,000. And since I've already plugged in my cost to the company on the first sheet, my average paycheck is 9, right? If you're on a split, your average paycheck would then be my 9,000 less my share paid to the company, and my average paycheck is 72, whatever that is, okay? So once we know what that number is, you're gonna divide it into the gross commissioned income number, and it's gonna tell you how many units you need to get there. Is that fair? Yes. Everybody following that so far?
Yes.
It's just a matter of following the formula. That's all it is. So now I know how many sales I need, and now we're coming down to your source of sales. Now you're gonna go back to that little sheet you had over there, and you're gonna say, well, in order to fund this, I have to have 22 sales. Let me go back to my source count. I've got 10 from this, I've got 5 from this, I've got 4 from this. And what I'm looking for is when you totaled it, did you get to at least 22? Because if you total it and you're sitting at 18, here's what I know immediately. If I'm at 18 and you need 22, then I'm looking and going 19, 20, 21, 22. Well, let's see, that's 4 sales we're short. Her average paycheck is $9,000. She's coming up 9, 18, 27, 36,000 short. This plan right here is coming up short $36,000. It doesn't work. See, the first time you do it is estimate, the second time is perfection. So then my question becomes, give me 4 more sales from someplace, or go back to that budget and knock out $36,000, which may mean that we don't just go back to the budget, you go back to your purpose sheets and cross off something you said you wanted that you're not willing to work for.
Wow.
See, there's no more, I want to do this and I'm so excited, gosh, it didn't happen. You never planned for it. You know that thing that didn't happen? You never planned for the $36,000 that was necessary. It wasn't even in your plan. Of course, you got what you asked for.
So what you're saying is that we're coming back here with sleeping bags and we're
Here's what I can tell you all, and this is something that I'm more than happy to do. I wanted you to have the basics of what you had to do here. You had to know how to use this. Okay? What I'm more than happy to do is if you want to have a follow-up meeting where we come back and everybody brings back their stuff and just asks questions, I'm happy to do that if you need it, if you want to do it. If it's not necessary, you're welcome to text me or ask me a question if you want to, that's fine. If you want to follow up, we just kind of come back and go, gosh, when I ran into this has happened, what was the answer to that? Happy to do it.
What's the, 1 through 10 on the first sheet? I forgot what it was.
The 1 through 10, oh wait a minute.
On sheet number 1, is the
Oh,
list of
here.
1 through 10
Forgive
data
me.
sources? Or?
Yes, I'm sorry.
That's what it was.
This is actually, you know that last sheet that I showed you, that you filled in? This is actually the visual for it.
Right.
It does the same thing. This is your life budget. This is how much money is coming from real estate. After you calculate it, this is the number of sales necessary, right?
Yes.
This is the sources of sales, which, when we talk about sources of sales, where's that? Required unit sales, actually, that shouldn't have a dollar sign on it. That required unit sales should be a number sign. So change that dollar sign to number sign. The source of sales should be a number sign also, which is nothing more than, I need 28 sales to make this plan work, and I'm concentrating on 8 different sources.
Okay.
And then those numbers in the middle are where you list them.
Okay.
So if you say, I need 22 sales, and when you did your sheet, you noted SOI, SOI referral, SOI past clients, video, open houses, niche market. If that's where your list is, you've got your list of how many different sources you're gonna work. So I'm gonna work 8 different sources, and here they're listed.
Right.
Okay? And then the marketing budget is the number you put in that number. It's what was on that sheet. And when I look at these things, I used to keep these, before it all got, real tech savvy, I used to have these for my agents, and I would just have a cycle. And if at any time somebody walked in the door, I could pull that file open, look at their thing and think, man, are they off? Right? I could look at the numbers, check something on there and go, they're not even close. And when I called them in, it wasn't, how you doing? It was, let's talk for a second. You had like 14 different sources on here, and I just checked something, and the open houses that were registered, it doesn't look like you've done anything for 30 days, and you've got like 8 sales this year that you're expecting from open houses. It was specific. We were going right to, what's your real problem, right?
What's your problem?
What's your problem? All right, and then last is that marketing budget. When I saw that number, these two are sitting right next to each other. That's really easy to check. Okay, you said you've got a marketing budget of $5,000 and you want $200,000? Something's wrong with those numbers, right? All right, and the last thing that I'll note on here, between these two things, here's the other thing that we'll end with this. The life budget and the gross commissioned income. When they're the same number, when I get somebody that says my life budget is $200,000 and I have to make $200,000 in real estate, I'm digging for what's on their financial purpose sheet. Because what they're telling me is that they are the only labor force. They've got nothing else but themselves working for the money. Right? When that number changes, it means in between there are assets, and those assets are starting to bring some of the money to the table. Retirement, investments, rental income. If I go from 200,000 to 150, then something in between became the labor force other than me. The goal in real estate, we should never be. It's one thing if you're there your first year. If 5 years later you're still at that same pattern, if 10 years later, shame on you. In between, something should be working to start to offset you being the only labor force between the life budget and the income you're making.
So you're telling us you have to find an investment property at some point in time?
Something better happen. Or you better find somebody really rich to marry that could contribute, right? Yes. Hold on real quick, y'all. Hold on, Jennifer's got real quick questions. Go ahead.
These letters,
Oh gosh. Okay, yes, you're right. The first one is purpose. Is it a P?
Where are we at?
The second one, it's like, what does stage 1 do for you? What does your life budget do for you? It gives you purpose, doesn't it? It tells you why you're doing this. All your whys are in there. It should never be a number. It's a why. These are all the reasons I'm getting up every day and doing that. That's your purpose. The second one is going to be clarity. Right. Clarity, which is, I know now how much I've got to get from real estate, and I know what's coming from something else. I know what I have to work for at this point. Unit sales is going to be statistics. You can't know it without knowing your stats. You have to know what your average sales price is. You've got to know what your commission rate is. You've got to know what your net dollar is on a paycheck. And then source of sales is business. What business sources are you focusing on in order to get there? And marketing budget is your funding, Yep, what's your funding to make this plan happen?
That's really good.
Your marketing budget should be what to what?
It should be 10 to 15% of the money you want to make.
Wow.
Yep. Your marketing budget should be at 10, and that gives you a chance to check your number. If you plug that number in and it's 2% of the money you want to make, you're in trouble. You better go back at that point and check what? If you've got this much money and a budget this big, what should you be going back to check?
No, out of all of them, yeah.
What your
Where,
sources are.
what your sources of business are, because they better be low dollar cost. Or you better figure out where the money is coming from and change that plan. And that again is what this is about. The first time around is to estimate. You might get to the end of it and go, oh my gosh, I need $325,000? Okay, I need to probably be more realistic. Let me go back and start massaging this. I'm probably not going to put $50,000 in my retirement account, or have $50,000 in savings this year. Let me go back and make it 5. You have to start being realistic at that point. Okay? Fair enough today? Did that help?
Wasn't she great?
Yes.
Before y'all go, just announcement, this is our last meeting here. As you can see, we have outgrown space. So Atlantic Bay is opened up. They have a beautiful facility. They've opened that up for us. They're on Lynn Haven Parkway. They'll set it up just like this, so we'll feel like home.
Nice refreshment.
Probably even feed us. So that's my first announcement. Second one is, because we're moving to a bigger space, Pam does an economic forecast. I know some of you have been able to attend that. We haven't been able to open up to everybody just because of space. So we will be opening that up to all of you. If you've never heard her do that, I highly encourage it. She's wonderful. You'll never not want to be there. And then does anybody have suggestions for future topics? Anything you're struggling with right now, or somebody had mentioned a tax accountant, somebody had mentioned organization. Any of you have any other things on your heart that maybe we could do in the future?
I'll tell you, if we can find somebody for systems
Systems
and really
would be
dig
a
into
good
systems.
So I don't know if this deserves like an entire session, but I've noticed a lack of professional etiquette and decorum lately amongst agents, and how to handle, like, if you're the passive agent, you've got an aggressive agent, and how to balance the nuance of, I might come into contact with this person again, so I probably shouldn't kill them. Because some people handle it really well, and some people just don't know what to do. And I think like kind of a toolbox for agents, especially if you're dealing with, because we've got a lot of new agents. COVID brought in a whole bunch of new agents, and then you've got those of us that have been in for like the middle amount of time, and then you got like the older agents that are like, stop it.
With ethics.
Yeah, I think professional decorum, and even like how we present ourselves on the phone, in text, in writing. What should be an email? What should be a text message? What deserves a phone call?
I like that title. And
Yeah,
we
professional decorum,
I
that's
mean,
a neat one.
we do have enough of us here that probably could just make it an open discussion too.
Yeah.
How would you handle this situation? Talk about situations we've had. Because I can tell you,
I mean, even like the presence of people on social media, like in some of the
Yes.
forums, and or just their page, and you go, oh,
yeah. I like
not
that.
you, not you.
Anyway, I like that idea. Let's float that for November. And if anybody has somebody or someone that maybe you feel would be good at throwing out some stuff, and then we just discuss it. I mean, I'm sure we all could come up with the scenarios and to just do an open forum type thing. That might be just as good. I think there's enough of us that have been around and had nuns hitting us over the head that we could probably answer some of those questions. But anyway, all right, well, great, well, thank you, and I will be sending out an invite. I can give you the date in November for that. It is the 9th, the Thursday the 9th, and same time, just different place. And when you come into Atlantic Bay, sometimes there's a receptionist, sometimes not. Just walk to the right of the receptionist, down the hall, and you'll find us on the right. All right, well, you all have a great day. Thanks for coming this morning.
See y'all.